you. Man, thank you. All right. Can you guys hear me? Man, I feel like Arsenio Hall. Young guys don't get that. Well, hey, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for letting me come and talk to you guys. I want to just share my journey with you all, and it's been a crazy one. It's been amazing. It actually started at ACU in 1986, and it really took off in 1990 when I went to Haiti as a senior and worked in a end-stage AIDS clinic for babies, and it set the course for my life from that moment on, and it's been an amazing journey. But also, man, I want to share with you my successes, but also I want to share with you my challenges and the failures that I experienced along the way that honestly it taught me to be vulnerable in those situations. Because when you're leading something, to be quite frank, you do not a lot of times want to accept those failures. But it's those failures that can break your heart and bring you back to the Lord and bring you back to what's important. And that's exactly what's happened to me on many occasions. So I want you to imagine yourself living on an island 700 miles off the Florida coast, which is Haiti, which we have up here. And you're working in a very rural clinic among mud huts. You're living there with your family, and you have lost count of how many babies you've lost, how many babies have died that month from HIV/AIDS. You literally lost count. I want you to imagine that one of your dear friends that you've known for a while comes to you one morning and says, "Hey, will you hike up to me to our hut? My son's dying of AIDS, and will you just come pray for him before he dies?" I was, "Of course." And I remember when I was doing that, I looked over at Bejeron. We were praying over him. His son was laying on a mat on the dirt floor in the hut, and I was praying. There's nothing I could do medically, and I looked over, and my friend Bejeron, he was just crying but singing, and he was wiping his son's body with his tears as he was crying, and his son did pass away right then. And that's what started my career in HIV/AIDS. That's what started my journey, and that's where I want to start with you all. In 2002, my family and I, we moved to Haiti as missionaries. We weren't your typical missionaries. It was me, my wife, my 7-year-old daughter, and my 5-year-old daughter. We weren't your typical missionaries. We ran a clinic. We ran a school of 300 kids, a feeding program daily for 300 kids. Well, most of them, it was their only meal. And it just so happened, too, the month that we moved there, the government was overthrown by rebels, by Guy Philippe, and we were in the middle of this civil war or a coup. And it just so happened that our dirt road, happened to be the dumping grounds for both the political parties and bodies to show the other party, this is what's going to happen if you support the other party. And I remember it was a brutal time. But I love what Rick shared earlier. He shared Isaiah 41. And this is what we cling to, man, the whole time, is that do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And even when we moved there, we were taking the place of some of our dear friends who I had interned with when I was at ACU in 1990. They had lived there as missionaries, and they were violently attacked, and they literally had to flee with nothing. They left everything they owned back there, and we were taking their place. And so everyone was telling us, including other missionaries, "You're crazy for going to live there. We would never live there." But we really felt that God, it was his will. We really weren't scared. We weren't arrogant. We weren't cocky. We just felt that this is where the Lord had wanted us. And so we started, and we lived there for 4 years, and I ran a medical clinic. My wife did the school and feeding program, and I could treat a host of deadly diseases. I could treat malaria, pneumonia, things that if you don't treat, people die. But one thing I could not treat especially in babies and in young children, was HIV/AIDS. We didn't have the ability to do that yet. I can remember Mitch Wilburn, one of my dear friends who I've known for a long, long time. He came down to support us when we were really struggling one time, and while he was there, this little baby died in the orphanage next to us, despite us trying everything. And her family her mom and dad had passed away from AIDS. And she died, and I remember Mitch, we were just broken. And he said, Brad, how many times has this happened? And I remember thinking, honestly, and the thing that popped out of my mouth is how many times did it happen this month? Because I lost count, and I knew something had to be done. I was just an RN at that time, not just an RN, I was an RN, and I had limited knowledge. I knew how to hold kids, I knew how to treat peripheral symptoms and that, but I didn't know how to really dive in. So after 4 years, after 4 years living in Haiti, my family and I, we went back to the U.S., and I went to Johns Hopkins. I got 2 masters, one in public health, specialized in international health and HIV, and the other as a pediatric nurse practitioner. And I immediately dove in. And when I got there, and this is really good for you guys too, and I've followed this model up until this day, and I'll continue to do it, is I immediately surrounded myself intentionally with people who had the same heart as me. People who I knew wanted to follow the Lord. People who I knew could not stand the status quo. They wanted to do something like Rick said today. They wanted to do something significant. I searched those people out and I hung on to them. Well, oddly, I was still going back to Haiti, wrapping things up as we had moved back because we still had some things going on there. After my first semester at Christmas, I got a call from a friend of mine in Haiti, in our village, an American who was living there. He actually was one of my interns, went to ACU, and he fell in love with the lady who was running the orphanage next to us, and he stayed. And he said, Brad, this thing's a menace. Said, Brad, your friend, I'll call her Jennifer. Your friend Jennifer, she's about to die. Jennifer was a Haitian lady who I took care of probably 5 days out of 7, who was the first lady in our village that got treated for HIV. When they brought her to me, actually I went to her. It was on a Sunday. I didn't see people on Sunday, or at least I tried to. We had a church right near our property. We lived on a 10-acre farm. And I was there, and after church, one of my community health workers came to me and said, Brad, I know we don't see people on Sunday, but this lady, she's dying, and we really need to go see her if possible. And so I said, of course. So we go and do that. I'm gonna switch this out, guys. Are you okay if I switch? Hello? Great. Man, that's good. Sound like Barry White. So we go to her hut, and this lady, it's the first time I'd met her. She's in this hut, this village actually. It was a really dangerous village. And until then, I really didn't go a lot. But I walked in her hut. She's on a dirt floor. She was probably 35, weighed maybe 80 pounds. Her left leg, she was covered with a blanket. It was about 110 degrees in her, and she was covered in these big blankets. And I knelt down, talked to her, and said, hey, I hear things are rough. I said, what's going on? And she told me. And I pulled back this sheet, and her leg was basically gone. It had started out as this little bitty bite from her working in the garden. She did farming, and because she had full-blown AIDS, which means she's completely immunocompromised, she had no immune system, and it just started eating away at her leg. And so that next day, we got her in the hospital. She stayed in the hospital, found out definitively that she was HIV positive and had active tuberculosis. But when she came back out of the hospital after a month later, for 2 years, I tried to heal her leg. She'd come to me and we'd debride it. We'd work on it. She was on antiretrovirals, which is HIV medication. She was getting better. So when we left, she was doing well. Well, just 6 months after we left, I got a call. And my friend said, man, Jennifer, she's about to die. She fell through the cracks. The program quit taking care of her. So I contacted the Haitian director of that program, and I told her what was going on, and she goes, we're aware of her, but everything's been fixed. Everything's running perfectly now. And even in the United States, if someone says everything's working perfectly, there's a level of suspicion. But when in Haiti you say that, I had learned that I was like, man, maybe we need to look in this a little more. So I asked her, I said, hey, do you mind if me and a couple buddies come down the next 6 months and we evaluate your program to see all the good things you're doing and learn, but also see where there's some challenges? And she said yes. I couldn't believe it, because that took a big stance of trust for her. So that next semester, I talked to my dean at the School of Public Health. I talked to my professors and told them what I wanted to do. And because I'd be gone a lot, and they said, if you keep your grades up and if you keep taking your exams on time, we'll let you do it. So man, that second semester at grad school, me and a buddy from Hopkins, a pediatrician from London, and another buddy who'd just gone into med school from Harvard, we started taking turns, and we evaluated this program where my dear friend was in this medical program for HIV positive women. We found that they were doing some good things, but we also found that there were a lot of things that were just really bad. They really weren't doing them well, and I had seen them. And the one big thing it was there was a huge high level of infant mortality with babies who were born to HIV positive moms. And that's what I had seen too. We had buried way too many. We had seen way too many pass away. So I went to the Haitian government. I went to the US government, who was actually trying to start the HIV program in the country of Haiti, and I showed them our data and said, we really need to start we need to start a program for these babies, because they're dying. There's nothing for them. And their answer to me was always, we'll start one in 2 or 3 years. We'll start one in 2 years. And I finally just looked at the director and I said, man, if that was your child, would you be satisfied with your own answer? They still didn't say anything. And I said, well, listen, if I can go and raise money and I can start our own program, will you give me permission to do that in your country? And they said, sure, kind of laughingly. And so we did. By the grace of God, I went back to Dallas. I met with an organization, raised about $150,000 or $200,000 in about a day or two, and we started the first pilot program for children born to HIV positive women in the country of Haiti, in northern Haiti. We did it for 6 months, and by the grace of God, it worked. It worked really well. We started our first babies on HIV medication in the country just with this little pilot with 3 punk grad students, me being one of them. And we took those data to the government and said, here's what we did. And they said, this is good. Can you do 5 more hospitals? We said, sure. And they said, well, can you actually do 10? And we said, yeah. They said, can you do 25? And we said, sure. So what we did is we started doing this program for the entire country. Now, go back. To test children for HIV, babies, we can't test them like we're tested as adults. We have to use very, very complex DNA testing. It's called DNA polymerase chain reaction testing. There's not a lab in Haiti that does it. It's a very protected lab. It's under very strict conditions. And so because I was at Hopkins, what the model we designed is I would test these children, put their blood on paper, on this filter paper, and then I'd overnight it to the Capitol, and then we would overnight it to Baltimore, and we would run the samples there. We would email back the results, and that's how we made it work. And so after about 3 or 4 months, man, we were training 1 hospital a day. We were just cranking them out. And I had a team there, and I finally, I went into the lab there in Baltimore one day at the med school, and I said, hey, how are the samples for this batch going? And they said, man, Brad, we've got a real problem. I go, well, what's going on? And they said, we're doing more tests for you. We're testing more babies for HIV for you in 1 month in Haiti than we are for the entire United States in 1 year. We can no longer do this. I said, but you have to do this. We just started this work. We can't go into a country where we're really, by the grace of God, saving lives and then stop it. They said, well, we'll give you 2 weeks to find another option. So that was on a Monday. I was broken, didn't know what to do. Tuesday, I remembered I had an older friend who had lived in Kenya for a long time. That's East Africa. And I remember he had a good Kenyan friend who was a virologist who worked in a lab doing this testing that we do. So I called him up on Tuesday. I said, hey, do you think your buddy would talk to me about maybe us taking samples from Haiti and sending them to Africa? They said, well, I think you're crazy. That probably won't work, but I'll go ahead and I'll give you his email. So I emailed him that night. Wednesday morning, I woke up, and I couldn't believe it. I had an email from him. And he said, Brad, I love what you're trying to do. If you can get here to Kenya in the next month or two, I'll talk to you about it, and we'll see what we can do. So that was Wednesday. On Thursday, I got on a plane, flew to Nairobi. By Friday night, I landed. Saturday night, I was having dinner with this doctor, Kenyan doctor, and his wife. I told him my plight, and he said, Brad, if you can get the samples here, he goes, we'll test them for you. And I said, you understand what we're saying? These are samples from Haiti. We're sending them all the way to you. And he goes, we'll do it. He was an amazing, beautiful Christian. He's still one of my best friends. So that week, man, I flew back to the U.S., flew to Haiti, changed our model. And by 6 months after that, by 2009, 99% of all babies in Haiti were actually being tested in Kenya, Africa. And it was a beautiful, beautiful collaboration of those two countries. Eventually, they asked if I would come to Kenya and do the same thing for them. So one of the partners that I had at that time, they took over the Haiti project. And my family and I, we were going to move to Kenya, and we were going to do the same program there on the coast of Kenya. It hadn't been done yet, so we were excited. We were 2 weeks, I just graduated. We were 2 weeks away from moving, and what I hadn't shared with you yet is that during this whole time, we were adopting our son from Haiti. The lady that I'd cared for got horribly sick, could no longer care for herself, and when she was healthy, she'd actually had a little boy, and when she became too sick, he wasn't able to be cared for, so went into an orphanage that my friends ran. And we thought, well, man, we know his family as well as anyone, so we want to become his parents now that he doesn't have them. And so we started the process of adoption. 2 weeks before we're moving to Kenya, we get a call, hey, your adoption's final. Come down and pick up, that sounds weird, but come get your son. And so my wife boogies down because I'm doing graduation, and she's there for a week. About halfway through, she calls me and she said, Brad, something's wrong. I go, what do you mean, baby? She goes, something wrong. He's not responding. He just doesn't respond. He's 18 months behind in his milestones, which is significant for a 2-year-old. And she said, but I think he's deaf. And I go, well, it's okay. We'll get through this. So thankfully, I was still at Hopkins. They got home on Friday, July 14th, his birthday. I'd contacted a center there at our med school and told them what was going on. Usually it'd take about 6 weeks to get in. They got us in on Monday. We went in Monday at 8:30. By 12 o'clock, they told us, your son is completely deaf, and you're not going to be able to move to Kenya. Said you can have two options. You can immerse him into a deaf community here as a family, like would be Washington, D.C. or something. He said, or we suggest you get cochlear implants, which it'll be a long road, but he'll be able to hear. He said, but if you do that, you can't leave the country for at least 5 years because it's constant therapy with that. So that was on a Monday. On a Tuesday, I had to call my organization and tell them, we're not moving anymore. This is what's happened. And they said, well, we love you, Brad. We'll give you 6 months to find a job, but we want to do work internationally, and you're not doing anything good for us here in the United States, which I understood. So we're devastated. We have no idea what we're going to do. It's probably the lowest I've been at that time in my life in a long time. Wednesday comes around, we're praying, and that night I get a call from an old friend, and he says, Brad, I've been emailing you for 6 months. He goes, have you been ignoring me? And I go, yeah, I actually have. I'm sorry. I've been really busy. And I said, I apologize, though. And he goes, well, listen, I know you're moving to Kenya in a couple weeks, but we want to try to talk you out of it. and move to Kansas City and run this program for us. They were a for-profit company, but they wanted to start a nonprofit, and they wanted to do work in Haiti and Africa. And so he said, would you come at least talk to us and think about not moving to Africa and running our company? And I said, well, man, you're not going to believe this, Kent, but as of yesterday, we're not moving to Africa anymore. And I told him why, and he goes, well, why don't you get on a plane tomorrow, come to Kansas City. Thursday I was on a plane, Friday got hired, flew back that Friday night. That weekend we loaded up, moved out to Kansas City instead of Kenya. And I started at this company. It wasn't a faith-based company. I found out really quickly that there wasn't my friend. He was actually let go, but it was his boss as the chairman, and that is that it was a very vain company. They wanted to use the work that we were doing internationally to help them get famous, to build favor with certain people. And I started realizing really quickly, this isn't what I wanted, but I didn't know what to do. But my wife and I, we really started praying. Well, we know we can't leave the country full time. Our son's just trying, he's 4 now, he's just trying to say his first word as a 4-year-old. And so we know my job needs to be as a father and as a husband right now. But we knew we needed to do something different, but we were really scared. And so about that time, the January of 2010, it's this week, 9 years ago, the Haiti earthquake happened. I was on my way home from the office, and I was listening to NPR, and it came on that there's just been this devastating earthquake. It's just the first day, but they're already thinking there already could be 100 to 150 to 200,000 people killed. So I got home, turned on the news, and it was worse than what they had even said. So I called my chairman, the company I was working with, and said, I really feel we need to go. He goes, go and take the people you usually go with, because if there's ever a disaster or a hurricane or something, we usually always go there. And so, yeah, thank you for getting me. So that next day, we went, because they'd closed the airport there in Haiti. You had to fly into the Dominican first. And so we flew into the Dominican, me and 4 of my best buddies. One's an ex-South African Special Forces who's been a missionary for the last 30 years, so I take him everywhere with me. He speaks every language in the world. He's lived in Haiti for 15 years. He's fluent. I speak the language. I brought 2 other people with me who spoke the language, who had lived there. And we fly in the Dominican, and we get there, and we're in the capital, and we land, and we already have a flight going over to Haiti. Well, they come on, and they say, listen, all the flights are canceled. You cannot get in the country. They've closed it down. And I started noticing all the news crews were there, CNN, NBC, Fox, MSNBC, ABC. And I started noticing there are these other nonprofit people there, and they're all at the bar with these news people, putting their cards there, trying to get on TV, trying to get publicity. None of them were trying to get in the country that we were supposed to go help. And it really just rocked me. And to be frank, it made me mad. So I went out, and to this day, I don't know how, why I was stupid enough to do it, but how I got out on the runway. It wasn't the full runway. It's where they parked the small private jets. And I took me and my buddy out there, who goes with me all over the world. We've been in crazy situations, and I knew we were safe together. 2 heads are better than 1. So I bring him out there, and I said, man, Rustin, what are we going to do? He says, well, you know Haiti better than me. I said, well, here's the thing, we can't drive. The borders were closed. We can get across the border. I can do that. I've done it 1,000,000 times. But we know that the Zanglandou, the bandits, the rebels, they'll come and they'll take everything we have. We can't do that. We've got to figure a way to fly there. Can we rent a helicopter? Can we do something? And we were leaning up against this private jet. Didn't look beautiful, but it looked like it could fly. I say that, and honestly, there was a mechanic hitting on one of the jet engines with a hammer. I have a picture of it. I should have put it up there, and I'm like, well, what is he doing? He literally was fixing this jet engine with a hammer, just banging on it. So we're sitting there talking and not coming up with any solutions. And all of a sudden, I see this really short, long-haired, found out he was from Venezuela. He looked like he was from South America, Central America, Mexico. he walks up to us, and he's got a beeline on my eyes. And I'm going, man, have I done something? And he goes, hey, what are you guys doing by my jet? And I go, oh, I'm sorry, this is your jet? And he goes, yeah, it is. And I go, man, we're bummed. We were supposed to be in the Capitol already, and they closed the airport. And he goes, yeah, I know, it's really a bummer. And he goes, well, what were you going to do there? So I told him we had really experienced medical personnel with us. All of us have lived there except one guy a lot of our life. We all speak the language. We're fluent. And we can really feel like we can help. And he goes, would you really want to get in? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, hang on. So he leaves about 15, 20 minutes. And he comes back and he goes, how many people do you have? I go, I've got 5. And he goes, where are your bags? I go, they're inside. He goes, go get them. He goes, don't ask any questions. Get in the jet and just strap up. I said, okay. So we get in, and I've got my buddy Brian, who's a South African, and I'm looking at him, and I said, are we on the up and up here? And he goes, I don't know, Brad. So we go, and he goes, all right, guys, I'm going to fly in. He gets in, shuts the door. He takes off. We take off, and we're up in the air. And it's not a long flight at all, especially with that jet. We're in the air 4 or 5 minutes. He's the only one flying the jet. He gets up. He comes back and starts talking to us. I'm going, bro, who's flying this? He goes, don't worry. I go, do you have a license? He goes, actually, I don't. And I go, well, I think it's a little late for me to ask you that, but why don't you have a license? He goes, well, my girlfriend and I took her out on a date in New York City, and I just had it on autopilot flying around New York City, and the FAA took my license. So I started looking around, and this jet has a mini bar. It has candles all around it. It's got shag carpet. And I go, what have we done? But he's going to get us there. So he says, you know, guys, on a serious note, he goes, have any of you ever done a rapid descent? And I go, no. And my buddy, who was a paratrooper, he goes, yeah, I've done it. He goes, well, this is going to be unlike any rapid descent you've ever had. He goes, when we're about to land, he goes, we're going to go from how many ever 1,000 feet to landing in a matter of seconds. As soon as we land, you don't say goodbye, you get your stuff, and you get out, and I have to take off. So we said, okay. So we go, and it was a landing. We land on the end of this runway. He's going, get out, get out, get out. So we're, okay. We're going out, and he doesn't say anything. He takes off. To this day, I don't know how he did it. I don't know if he went against orders or what. But this guy got us there. So, of course, the UN and the Haitian military, they start coming. They said, what are you doing? And we said, hey, we're just here to help. How did you get here? And we told them. They said, So we take our stuff, man, and we just walk out. I know. So we walk out, and guys, it's a no man's land. These are the good pictures. It was heartbreaking. It really was. I'd worked in Haiti by that time, 18, 20 years. I'd never seen this. My friend who had been in the Angola War, he'd been in wars all over as Africa. He said, Brad, I've never seen this kind of destruction. And so we didn't know we were going to go. We just know that we really felt that the Lord said, man, this is what we need to be doing. So I saw this guy that I knew I had met in the past, a city of how many million. He yells at me as we're driving in our Land Cruiser. He goes, Brad, what are you doing? I go, man, we're looking for the epicenter. We've got some medical. We want to go and help. He goes, oh, you need to go up here. And he told us how to get there, and we went. We arrive in this hospital, and all there is are people laying everywhere, their bodies everywhere. And so we go in, and we look for someone who works in this hospital. It's a Haitian hospital in Port-au-Prince, right in the epicenter. We can only find one man. He says he works there. Everyone else had fled or were killed. We told him what we were doing. He goes, well, let's get started. So we just started a triage. We actually found 2 other Haitian doctors who'd come up to see if they could help. So we started a triage first day, worked 24 hours. The next day, a couple more doctors came. The next day, a couple surgeons from the U.S. came. And it started to become the hospital in the capital where everyone started coming. We were working so hard. But what I started to get from my company was, why aren't you interviewing? Why aren't you getting in front of the press? Why aren't you going down to the bars and meeting up with the reporters so you can get us publicity? And I said, that's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. We want to be in the trenches working. If that's what we're doing, God is our person who's going to get us the publicity, and I truly believe that.
So worked there for a few weeks, and I'll be frank, man, I was broken. Flew back home for a week to take a break, came back, worked for a couple more weeks, and I went back home. And I was really depressed. And so my wife and I went up to her mom's farm up in North Missouri. I just needed to find myself, kind of get with the Lord. And there was this book on my mother-in-law's desk. It was the greatest, sorry, I'll keep you guys caught up. It was called The Richest Man in the World, King Solomon. And I just started reading it. At that time, I knew I had to make a break from this company. It wasn't following the Lord. I wasn't around ethical people, but I didn't know how to break away. I wouldn't have a salary. I had all the work we were doing. It was all proprietary in my name, so I could take it with me, but I had no way to fund it. But I started reading this book, and it started saying, man, if you're with the Lord, if you're giving it to him, if you're begging him, if you're praying, searching, he's going to guide you. It doesn't mean you'll succeed, but he's going to put you where he wants you. And I spoke to my wife about it, and I said, I think we're supposed to leave this company and start our own company. She says, how are we going to pay for it? I said, I don't know. Worst business decision on paper you can make. But I felt that this is really what the Lord wanted us to do. So I came back from the farm, went and spoke to my chairman. I said, man, I'm going to resign, and I'm going to go ahead and start my own company. And I'm going to go ahead and request that I take all the work with me. He said, sure, man, go ahead and do it. So, man, we started our company that we have now, 2010, May of 2010, in my basement. I was the only employee, no salary, no funding yet for the work that we were doing. But I really felt it was the right thing. I kept going back to Isaiah 41. The Lord, if we were doing what we were supposed to, the Lord was going to care for us. During that time, the previous couple years, I was very blessed to start that national program for Haiti for children. And then it started moving to Africa. Even though I didn't live there, we still, I was helping them out. Even though we had a program, I noticed there were gaps, that there were still children falling through the gaps that weren't getting help. For example, in the largest maternity hospital in East Africa, in Nairobi, they were losing 90% of their children born to HIV-positive moms, even with this program. It was failing. And so I started thinking where the gaps were, and I realized certain things. And so I came up with this innovation, this intervention in my head. It was based on different algorithms, how certain interventions worked with certain doctors, with the moms, with the labs. And one thing I realized is we needed to connect these three. None of them were talking to each other, but you need technology to do that. The cool thing about East Africa at that time is that cellular technology was booming. 96% of mothers in Nairobi at that time, and around 70% of mothers in rural areas had some sort of cell phone. Not the cell phones we have, but little bitty, not even flip ones, just little bitty phones that you buy minutes for and use. So they could all get technology. So I started thinking, what if I connect all of these people and let them know that, hey, let the doctor know this baby hasn't come back, this mom hasn't come back. Let the mom know, hey, you need to get to the hospital for this intervention for your child. And so I drew it up. I knew it would work, but I had to get someone. It had to be on a server. Someone had to be able to look at it on their laptop, on their phone. So I needed a programmer. I'm not a programmer. So, man, I started going to people high up in HIV who did programming. They all said, well, I'll tell you what they said. I started going. I went to Google. I went to Cerner. I went to Skype. They all laughed. I went to smaller organizations. And these are the real responses I got. No. I have read every book on Haiti and Africa, and this will never work. No thanks. I know people, and they will never use this. This can't be done. It's too technical for the people in Africa. It will never work. This will fail. These are real quotes that I would write down after I'm out of a board meeting, and they told me no. So I was discouraged, but I knew it would work. So I kept trying. One day, My good friend who called me originally, Kent, who got me to move to Kansas City, as soon as I moved there, he got fired. He called me and said, Brad, you're still trying to do the HIT system, right? Your program. I go, yeah. He goes, I've got a programmer in Kansas City who I think's your right choice. And I'm thinking, okay, I've been down this road with you once. Is this guy a good guy? And he goes, he's an amazing, godly man. So I went and met him. He had this old 200-year-old building in Kansas City as his office. And I said, Terry, this is what I want to do. Have you ever done medical programming? He goes, no. He's like 6'5", country boy. And I go, have you ever done any kind of medical stuff with HIV? No. I said, well, can I show you what we need to do? He goes, yeah. So his office was amazing. It was down in the basement of this 200-year-old building. It was, you walk in and it was whiteboard, 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 and then just different things on this one. So I started writing the algorithms of what I wanted to do for these mothers and children all the way on the boards. It took about an hour, and then I walked him through it for about 2 hours. He didn't say a word during any of it, and so I'm thinking, this is dead on arrival. So I said, hey, man, what do you think? And he goes, yeah, I can do it. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, I can do it. I said, well, when can you have it done? 6 months, 8 months? He goes, I'll get it to you in a month. Oh, really? He goes, yeah. So I said, okay. So I go back, I'm still trying to raise money just to pay for us to live. He calls me in 2 weeks and says, hey, can you come down to my office? I go, sure. And he says, man, I'm done. I go, what? He goes, I'm done. And so I know we have some musicians here, you know, and I'm a hack. I play guitar since I'm a kid, but I'm so embarrassed I don't play well. And there's this ultimate fight inside me always that what I want here and what I want here to go to here, it's brutal. It doesn't happen very well. And so it was the same thing with this. I had what was in here and here, and I was trying to tell this guy what I wanted, and it was going to be brutal. He opened up his laptop, and he said, here it is. And I'm not exaggerating. It was everything that I had hoped it to be in my head. The color, the algorithms, the softness, the simpleness of it. It was beautiful. So we had it. We could go. So I went to Kenya, told my best buddy who helped me when we were in Haiti, I said, we've got this. Let's schedule a meeting before the government, the HIV Technical Working Group, and let's present this idea. They're going to go crazy for it. So we did that. These are the answers we got again from the government. We don't need this. This can't be done. It's duplication of what we already have. HIV nurses and doctors will never use this. It'll never work. We were broken. I was broken. I said, we finally made it where we could get here. We know they need it, and they're telling us no. They're not even telling us no. They're kind of mad. We even suggested they needed help. It was that bad. And my friend, Dr. Samuel Hamadi, he's a beautiful Christian. He said, Brad, don't worry. Keep your eyes on God. If it's his will, this will happen. I said, that's great, but how is he going to make it happen? Because they're telling us no. I flew back home to the U.S. There's an email waiting for me when I get there, and he goes, I figured it out. He goes, we'll do it as a research pilot. I already got permission. So we raised money to do a year-long pilot with beautiful Christians in the U.S. we started a grassroots movement, to be quite frank, of these people who had a heart for this work. They funded it for a full year. We did it in 2 hospitals, this program, and we showed that it could work. We showed that not only could work, the work was groundbreaking. They had never seen outcomes like this with children with HIV in their country, probably in East Africa. And that hospital, those 2 hospitals, literally it felt like overnight. 2 hospitals in one country, 300 mothers and babies, HIV-positive mothers and their babies, grew to 4 countries, 300 hospitals, 125,000 mothers and babies. It grew that fast by the grace of God. So with that, we were blessed to get an NIH grant, which is huge. 2 NIH grants, actually. One of them was one that people try their whole life and sometimes don't get. Only by the grace of God we got it. We got awards. We got publications, not in some of the best publications and medical journals in the world, but the very best journals in the world. And we felt like we were on cloud nine. But then something happened. We were doing exceptional work. And let's back up 2 years from where we are now to 2016. We have a new administration. We have a new president. And all of a sudden, AIDS funding for international work starts getting cut. Not just getting cut, but cut by 50%. Our revenue in 2 months was cut $30,000 a month from grants, from contracts we had with it's an aid package by the U.S. government called President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR. It's what George Bush signed into law, and it literally saved a generation of kids. It helps fund all HIV work in all of Africa. It's the biggest international aid work we've ever done as a country. It started getting cut, and our funding was cut 50% overnight. For the past 2 years, let me back up. From when I started my company, there were several things that I wanted to do. I always wanted to honor the Lord in what we were doing. I always wanted to make sure we were within his will. I always looked to him before making decisions. Like I told earlier, when you start going to grad school or when you're in now or even when you're working, you start deliberately finding people who will build you up. I immediately started doing that. We went from 1 person to 2 on our team to 3 to 6 to 8. And in Africa, different countries, we went from 1 to 2 to 40 to 50. But we still made every chance we could is to surround ourselves with smart people, definitely smarter than me. And I said, as a leader, I will always listen to them. Well, these past 2 years, when this new administration come, my team was telling me, Brad, we've got to start preparing. There are going to be cuts. And I said, no, we're doing fine. We're going to do well. We have this grant. Brad, the cuts are coming. We have to think ahead strategically. I go, we're going to be okay. And what I found is that actually we weren't. I hadn't listened to them. It was a colossal failure as a leader on my behalf. It was brutal. And I'd realized I'd lived through a coup, worked in the earthquake. I worked with children rescued from child slavery in West Africa. These things ripped my heart in half, but none of them affected me like me failing as a leader, and that I had let my team down and I hadn't listened to them, especially my wife, who's the smartest person I know. And that actually affected us as a couple. It affected me as a father, definitely. And so I had to learn pretty quickly as a 51-year-old man, which we don't like to do. I had to be vulnerable and take the heat and say, this was me. I had to confess in front of the Lord and say, this is me. People around me, it's not them. Me as the leader, I'm the one who did this. And I tell you, it's the most redeeming, one of the most redeeming, beautiful things that's ever happened to me in my life. First off, as a person, as a son of God, but as a husband and as a father, and then as the president of our organization, making myself vulnerable, listening to those around me, and then me accepting and confessing to our Lord, this is what I had done in failing. It freed me. It was beautiful. So there's good news, man. We are back doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. The work is better than ever. We have new innovations that we're the first, by the grace of God, to do certain work in HIV in all of East Africa. Things are good. But we're still having to recover financially from those mistakes we made. But that is okay. It's okay. Nothing is always going to go correct. It's when you become leaders, to one, acknowledge everything's not going to go perfect. If you have a dream, I love what Rick said today, do something significant. never, ever, ever, ever be satisfied with the status quo. You're the one in a godly way who shakes it up and says, I will not be satisfied with the status quo. I'm going to end on this one before we take our break. This is just our work here. This is our team, one of our team in Tanzania. We're just so blessed with beautiful souls. So I want to finish just this talk real quick with a quote from Brennan Manning. Man, if you guys don't know Brennan Manning, you need to dive into this guy. He is just blown my world away for the last 20 years. The crazy thing is I've read this so many times, but I recently read it when I started going through this season of me knowing that I made wrong decisions as a leader for our company. It says, the road I've traveled these last 38 years is marked by disastrous victories, magnificent defeats, soul-diminishing successes, and life-enhancing failures. You first read that and you go, man, this guy's a failure, or he's dark, or what is going on? But he is right on. Some of the successes I've had have been beautiful. They're life-changing. They'll be generational, but some of them, I felt like they almost took my soul. Why? Because I took my eyes off the Lord as a leader of our organization, and more importantly, as a leader of our family, as a husband and as a father. Life-enhancing failures. I am so thankful that I failed now because I was lukewarm. I feel like God has taken this muddy, dirty window and he's put Windex on it and he's cleaned it, and I can see now. Those failures broke me, but they brought me back to his feet. So that's what I want to encourage you to do, is that when you get these failures, man, again, going back to, I think Rick looked at what I was saying today. Don't get stuck in the past. Don't. But use those to make yourself better. And use that as a springboard, that setback, to get back on your feet. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate talking to you.